veteran of the United States Army. First, thank you for your service, and thank you for being on the program. So what would a censure look like exactly, and how much further does this take it for Representative Omar than just a resolution?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the censure is incredibly important because, you know, she's been apologetic, what, 3 times now, just as a new member of Congress. And, you know, the House has already voted unanimously to condemn anti-Semitism. So another message condemning it isn't going to solve anything. She needs to, as Congressman Scalise highlighted, needs to be removed from her committee. You know, when a Republican said comments that were viewed as racist, even though he was apologetic, he was removed from all his committees. Of course, the speech and debate clause protects her right to say it as a member of Congress, but that doesn't mean that she should be given sanction for it. Is the Democratic Party big enough, is their tent big enough to allow for anti-Semitism? I certainly hope not.
Well, Congressman, you talk about repetitive motion in terms of this. The JCRC, the Jewish Council in Minnesota, led by Director Steve Hunnigs, has said that they are appalled that, and this is a quote, appalled that she is trafficking in yet another anti-Semitic trope. So this has happened even before she got to where she is now, when she was in politics earlier in Minnesota. So repetitive motion is really what's happening here. How do you stop it? And by the way, you brought up Steve King, Representative Steve King, and what happened with him after his racist remarks. And what you're talking about is parity now in terms of what would happen to her.
Well, I think our party's been consistent. You know, our party's not big enough, a big enough tent to tolerate racism, and or even the perception of racism. And the reality is, for the Democrats to say, "Oh, well, we're against anti-Semitism in general," and everyone knows that's why we're talking about this right now. Everyone knows that we're talking about Congresswoman Omar's comments, and it's not appropriate for her to continue to have no action other than, you know, sternly worded statements or, you know, more, you know, posts on Facebook. This needs to be taken action by the Democratic leadership.
Do you think it's fair then
as many of my Democratic colleagues are concerned, and they're expressing in private and some in public over her comments today,
yeah, some of them in
over the
public,
weekend,
for sure,
that, you know, there are a handful of freshmen that have taken away the historic Democratic Party. They've moved the party far to the left. And so traditional Democrats are like, we're not socialists and we're not anti-Semitic, but these new members are defining the party as a socialist party and as an anti-Semitic party. And so that's a real identity crisis for the Democratic Party. And if they just simply post strongly worded statements and they don't take action, I think they're vulnerable to that criticism.
So is it fair then, because we're talking about race, and in this case we're talking about religious freedom, is it fair then to say that maybe the clock is ticking a little shorter now on some of these comments? Because Republicans were not always quick to act when it came to Steve King. But what you're telling me today is that it's time to move things forward. So I want to get your response to Representative Tlaib defending Representative Omar amid these anti-Semitic, this latest controversy with remarks. She says, strength inspires me in so many, the Congresswoman from Minnesota. She is being targeted just like many civil rights icons before who spoke out about oppressive policies. Is that what this is?
Well, I think what's happening is Congresswoman Tlaib is trying to normalize what Congresswoman Omar is saying, and they're trying to make that the brand of the party, and they're trying to make that more accepted in the country. Frankly, historically, one of the most bipartisan things for the United States was we stand with Israel. That's not because we have an allegiance to Israel. It's because they're aligned with our values and they're aligned with our principles of government. They're not over there doing things that are governed by Sharia law. They're living peacefully among their neighbors where possible. They're defending their sovereignty, and they're surrounded by neighbors that you know, chant death to Israel while chanting death to America. That puts the two of us with mutual interests frequently.
That's very interesting. And you're calling out a double standard, and it sounds like some Democrats are getting on the record with, if you're going to call out one for race, you've got to call out one for anti-Semitic and religion. Representative Davidson, great to have you on the program. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Another Fox